now that we can see how short life really can be, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? That's a trigger. That's the biggest trigger that I have ever experienced. What are you going to do the rest of your life? And what I had to do is I had to start taking some of my own advice. I have been telling people, I had written about it for a very long time, that if you're doing something that you're not totally committed to, if you're doing something that you're not totally passionate about, you're compromising yourself every day.
I'm at my best when I'm around people who believe what I believe. I know it seems silly, but I try very, very hard to sort of stack the deck, to put myself in a position of strength. So for example, somebody asked me just yesterday, have you ever had sort of a bad, engagement? And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, not really, but it's not because I'm some sort of genius or anything like that. It's because I stack the deck. It's because I want to be there. I want to be around people who want me there. In other words, if I'm somebody's 10th choice, and I'll probably turn it down. Whereas if I'm their first choice, they really want me there, and so I'm more likely to have a good engagement. They're supportive of me, I'm supportive of them, and so I'm at my best when I stack the deck, when I choose to be in an environment where my strengths are there.
I was broke, you understand? I was broke when I was 25, dead broke. I'm not talking about financially broke. Let me tell you something. No, I didn't have any money in my pocket. I didn't have any credit cards. Nobody would give me credit, okay? Didn't have a driver's license. Okay, 1970 Ford Maverick, had a 1970 Ford Maverick, no air, no heat, no door handles. The freaking floor was rusted, okay? I lived in a 275 square foot apartment, maybe 300 square feet if you counted the little step out in the front of the front door. Paid $275 a month and I was late almost every month. So don't tell me about your money problems, man, okay? Don't tell me about where you were born. Don't tell me about your bad breaks. Don't tell me about what your daddy did or your uncle felt you up or something, did some kind of weird thing to you and I'll ruin your head, or your sister abused you or whatever, okay? Look, we all got problems. You gotta fix your problems now. You gotta get your money right. So at 25 years old, I'm like, I'm getting my money right, I'm done. No more excuses, no more crybaby, no more blame. I'm getting my freaking money right.
Whenever you start feeling in your life like, oh my gosh, is this all there is? Huge red flag, number one. Number two, when you spend your energy being jealous or having the grass is greener over there, another big wake-up call for you that you're ready for a change. And then the other final red flag is if you're spending your life waiting to be happy. I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I change my job. I'll be happy when I launch a business. It's time to change now, because that moment's not coming unless you make it come.
I'm kind of like a crazy person when I prep. I do timelines and backstories, and I work with a dialect coach and a movement coach and an acting coach. And I need to do a lot before I show up to set so I can throw it all out the window when I get on set. But if I hadn't done all the work beforehand, I would just be too scared to.
Did you watch a lot of footage of Tonya Harding?
I've watched every single piece of footage there is on her 1,000 times over, and I had her voice in my iPod. I'd go to sleep listening to her. I mean, I lived in Tonya land for a long time.
We launched Virgin Atlantic 30 years ago. The New York Times did a review, and they did some market research, and they said, first of all, with a name like Virgin, it's not going to go the whole way. But secondly, that they did market research which said only 7% of people would fly on an airline called Virgin, and we put our hands up and said 7% would be just fine. So so we carried on with it. But there were a lot of skeptics out there, and there always will be lots of skeptics when you want to start something new. Everybody will tell you why it's a bad idea, why you shouldn't do it, why you'll lose everything you've got. And in the end, you just got to get out and try to prove them wrong. But good luck.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Isn't that a profound statement? You will notice that it says nothing about the need for education, but simply that whatever your mind can conceive and believe, your mind can achieve. Now, if you want evidence that the mind can achieve whatever the mind can conceive without the benefit of formal education, You only have to remember that Thomas A. Edison conceived the idea of becoming an inventor and lived to become the world's greatest scientist in the field of invention with only 3 months of common school education.
My dreams are first every day, then my wife, then my kids. I can take care of my wife and my kids now. Would you agree? I abandoned this. This is the fuel for who I am. I abandoned this dream, and then I can't take care of them. And then I'm gonna tell them what? It's all right that you didn't win. No, it's not all right if you don't win. You need to win. How many of you need to win more? Okay? If you don't control your environment, folks, somebody else is going to control your environment. You guys that run teams and run organizations, if you do not control your environment, someone else will control your environment. You are being controlled in your environment right now. CNBC, CNN, MSNBC, the parents, the kids, the Twitter, the Facebook, the YouTube, the Google, the Snapchats are your environment. Your friends and your relatives, your uncles, your aunts, the garbage dump called planet Earth that you live on is mostly broken people. If you don't control your environment, it starts with me. When I was 45 years old, I'm like, I'm gonna control my environment. I'm gonna take every penny I have, all the energy I have, all the resources I have, and I'm gonna improve me. If I got to go broke in the process, because I'm already broke. Look, if you're not fulfilled to if you're not reaching your full potential every day, you're broke right now.
I get it back by remembering that you might die tomorrow.
That's true.
So I'm inspired by practicality and reality and the truth, which is, it is ridiculously impossible to become a human being. I am one. I have other good things going for me as a human being, and I'm just grateful. You're dwelling and looking at what you don't have versus looking at what you have. If you actually looked at what you had, your health, living in America, who the heck knows what would be on your list? If you actually spent all your time looking at that versus, I don't have $1 million, I'm not famous, I don't have this. If you spent all your time on what you have versus what you don't have, you would be the happiest girl on earth.
Can I be honest with you? They cut me 6 times down my left eye, 1 time across the left side of my neck, 1 time across the right side of my neck, twice through my right ribs, cut out my right pec, bottom of my armpit to the bottom of my hand, 350 staples in my body, and they bandaged me from my neck to my knees. This is not lip service. And I gotta be honest with you, it was days to where if I could have laid there, I would have laid there. But my spirit said that's not who you are. My mentality said that's not who you are. Like, I don't know about you all, but I'm a fighter, man. I fight for my goals. I fight for my dreams. I fight for the things that I represent and the things I'm a part of. And I dare you, the things that you do, the things that you're a part of, and the things that you're connected to, I dare you every single day to show up and give everything you got to. I dare you every single day when you wake up, you understand you represent something a lot greater than yourself. I dare you to go with 15, represent it, give everything you got to it. Go home to your family, go to your careers, give everything you got to every aspect of your life. And I dare you to watch what happens with your mentality. As a matter of fact, like my 5-year-old son tells me, I double dog dare.
In the 18th century, there was something that spread across Europe and eventually made its way to America called puerperal fever, also known as the Black Death of childbed. Basically what was happening is women were giving birth and they would die within 48 hours after giving birth. This Black Death of childbirth was the ravage of Europe, and it got worse and worse and worse over the course of over a century. In some hospitals, it was as high as 70% of women who gave birth who would die as a result of giving birth. But this was the Renaissance. This was the time of empirical data and science, and we had thrown away things like tradition and mysticism. These were men of science, these were doctors. And these doctors and men of science wanted to study and try and find the reason for this Black Death of childbed, and so they got to work studying, and they would study the corpses of the women who had died. And in the morning, they would conduct autopsies, and then in the afternoon, they would go and deliver babies and finish their rounds. And it wasn't until somewhere in the mid-1800s that Dr. Oliver Wendell Holmes, father of Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, realized that all of these doctors who were conducting autopsies in the morning weren't washing their hands before they delivered babies in the afternoon. And he pointed it out and said, "Guys, you're the problem." And they ignored him and called him crazy for 30 years, until finally somebody realized that if they simply washed their hands, it would go away. And that's exactly what happened. When they started sterilizing their instruments and washing their hands, the Black Death of childbed disappeared. My point is, the lesson here is, sometimes you're the problem. We've seen this happen all too recently with our new men of science and empirical studiers and these men of finance who are smarter than the rest of us until the thing collapsed. And they blamed everything else except themselves. And my point is take accountability for your actions. You can take all the credit in the world for the things that you do right, as long as you also take responsibility for the things you do wrong. It must be a balanced equation. You don't get it one way and not the other. You get to take credit when you also take accountability.
You know, I've heard a lot of experts say that fear isn't real. That is such a bunch of baloney. Fear is so real. In fact, there are probably things that you're afraid of doing right now in your life, in your relationships, at work. And the fact that you're afraid, that's robbing you of all of the experiences that you want to have in your life. I mean, if you're afraid to fly, that's going to limit your ability to travel and see the world or go visit friends. If you're afraid of public speaking, that's going to really limit your ability to express yourself and share your ideas. If you're afraid of talking to your boss or asking for a raise, that directly impacts how much money you make. Or what if you are dreaming of starting a business, or you've already started a new business, but you're afraid to talk to people and you're afraid to share your business with people? I mean, fear is something that stops us all. And that's why I'm here to talk to you, because it doesn't have to. Fear is real, but I am going to share a secret weapon that I have used for years to beat every single fear that used to stop me. Now, first, before we get into this secret weapon, I just want to cover a few facts about fear, what it is, what it isn't, and some things that you may not know about fear. So first thing, fear is a physical state in your body that is exactly the same as excitement. Let me say that again. Fear and excitement are the exact same physical state. Your heart races. You might sweat a little bit. You might feel tightening in your chest. You might feel a pit in your stomach. You have a surge of cortisol. It's basically the way that your body goes into a hyper-aware state because it's readying for action. Now, what's the difference between fear and excitement? Really simple. The only difference between fear and excitement is what your brain is doing as your body is all agitated. If you're excited, your brain's going, "Oh, wow, this is going to be so cool to ride this roller coaster." If you're afraid, your brain's going, no way, there's no way I'm doing that. This is dangerous. Get out of there. Don't do that. It's saying something different. So what's critical about understanding this is that we're going to use the fact that your mind is either working for you for excitement or against you with fear to your advantage. And I'll tell you about it in just a minute, how you're going to do that. Second thing I want you to understand is that you may have heard the advice, feel the fear and do it anyway. You may have heard the advice, oh, just try to calm down. Think positive thoughts. It doesn't work, does it? And there's a reason why it doesn't work. So let's go back to fact number one. When you're afraid, your body's in a state of arousal and agitation, and your heart is racing, and you're all like amped up, and you're hyper aware of what's going on, and you're freaking out a little bit. What is it like when you're calm? You you just kind of chill, right? You got like this low arousal state. Very, very difficult to go from a state of agitation and being all jacked up and excited and weirded out to a kind of state. It doesn't work. It's like trying to stop a train by throwing a boulder on the tracks. It's going to make the train jump off the tracks. It's going to cause a disaster. In fact, they've proven in research that when you try to ignore your fears, it actually makes them worse. And they've also proven in research that positive thinking alone also can make your fears worse. So, what do you do? What do you do when you're about to go talk to your boss and you feel afraid? What do you do when you have to get on a plane and you're actually terrified of flying? What do you do if you got to give a presentation and you are afraid of public speaking? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to use a strategy, the same one that I use, that has helped me beat every single fear and turned me into somebody that is terrific when it comes to a high-stress situation. This is how you do it. You're going to use my 5-second rule in combination with what I call an anchor thought, and that is going to reframe what your mind is doing so that your mind goes from feeling agitation and making you afraid to reframing it from agitation to excitement. It works like magic. Now, I have used this technique for years, literally for years. And one of the ways that I want to introduce you to it is I want to take you backstage. I want to take you backstage to a speech that I delivered this year. And what you're going to see is you're going to see me behind, the major set. I'm about to walk out. You can kind of hear the crowd roaring. My introductory video is playing. My body is in a state of arousal. I am literally, my heart is racing, my arms are sweating. It's like you're going to see this. I'm going to tell you about it. And you're going to watch me use this same technique I'm going to teach you to reframe my nerves into excitement.
The best players always follow the best players. They want to be in the top of the game because the other ones, they are there. You cannot rest or sleep because the other one can pass you. Of course, we fight with everyone. With Neymar, with Messi, with Lewandowski, with Higuain, with the top of the best players in the world. So, this is not fighting, but it's hard, it's healthy. Comparisons is healthy, and we fight, to be the best. This is why it's my main point, it's my motivation, it's to be better than them, year after year.
I kept my job at McKinley, and part-time I started in the financial services industry and started to build a team of people and started to get my licenses and that transition, and I struggled like every upstart entrepreneur does.
It takes like 3 to 5 years until you really get a few clients,
In any business, I don't care if it's financial services, tech, dry cleaners, entrepreneurs, the first 5 years is just full of false starts. You get it going, then you don't. You get it going, you take a step forward, you take 3 back. It's constant false starts. It's constantly thinking you have it going. It's constantly negotiating in your mind the price you're paying. Is it worth it? Should I quit? Should I give in? I spent the first 5 years daily contemplating quitting. All the time.
Because it's not fun.
It wasn't fun. And there's just a part of you, I think, in anything you're doing when you're struggling, is this really for me? Is this my destiny? Should I be doing this? And we misread failure from some sign. Is this a sign I shouldn't be doing it? Is this a sign I am, not cut out for this? Instead of looking for signs that you can win, right? And so I spent the first 5 years literally trying to find ways to quit. Trying to find ways to get out, struggling. And I went broke. I lost a car. I had the water turned off in my place. I bought my first house. I ended up having it foreclosed on eventually. So I'm not that house with the unicorns that you saw, right? Or my beach place. That's all the after. People don't realize that there were just years and years of grinding and struggling and worrying in the beginning. And then I made some mental changes and some shifts that altered my life then again.
Here's a trick that's proven by science that I use every time I speak. When I start to sweat, when I start to have butterflies, when I start to have my heart race, I say, I'm excited. I'm excited to get out there. I'm excited to talk to these people. I'm excited to share the 5-second rule. And what that does is it sends a message to my brain that tells my brain why my body's all agitated and excited. And that way, I don't feel afraid. Remember, excitement and fear, exact same thing in your body. The only difference is what your brain calls it.
Go get him.
I've never actually thought I was, starting a company as such. I just saw situations as I traveled in life where I felt I could improve on the way things were being done by other people. So, one of my favorite phrases is "screw it, let's do it," and I've used that phrase a lot of times. And we just love going in and trying to shake up industries and doing it better than it's been done before.
Nelson Mandela is a particularly special case study in the leadership world because he is universally regarded as a great leader. You can take other personalities, and depending on the nation you go to, we have different opinions about other personalities. But Nelson Mandela, across the world, is universally regarded as a great leader. He was actually the son of a tribal chief. And he was asked one day, "How did you learn to be a great leader?" And he responded that he would go with his father to tribal meetings. And he remembers two things when his father would meet with other elders. One, they would always sit in a circle. And two, his father was always the last to speak. You will be told your whole life that you need to learn to listen. I would say that you need to learn to be the last to speak. I see it in boardrooms every day of the week. Even people who consider themselves good leaders, who may actually be decent leaders, will walk into a room and say, "Here's the problem, here's what I think, but I'm interested in your opinion, let's go around the room." It's too late. The skill to hold your opinions to yourself until everyone has spoken does two things. One, it gives everybody else the feeling that they have been heard. It gives everyone else the ability to feel that they have contributed. And two, you get the benefit of hearing what everybody else has to think before you render your opinion. The skill is really to keep your opinions to yourself. If you agree with somebody, don't nod yes. If you disagree with somebody, don't nod no. Simply sit there, take it all in, and the only thing you're allowed to do is ask questions so that you can understand what they mean and why they have the opinion that they have. You must understand from where they are speaking, why they have the opinion they have, not just what they are saying. And at the end, you will get your turn. It sounds easy, it's not. Practice being the last to speak. That's what Nelson Mandela did.
If you're looking to instigate a change in your life, there's no better or worse time than right now. Hey, I understand. Change is scary. With the status quo, you know what you've got. If you shake things up, there's no telling what you might end up with. But two other things are true about change. One, it's absolutely necessary for personal growth, and two, it's gonna happen. Either you can pick the time to instigate the change you want, or the change and the time will pick you. So if you happen to be one of those people who's standing on the sidelines of your dreams, waiting for that perfect moment, if you want to make that change, but you just don't know if you're ready, this life lesson is for you. It's time to stop digging your potatoes and jump.
I kind of grew up in that space that is dangerous because it's like a slow asphyxiation, right? I grew up what I'd call like middle class, but probably the lower side of middle class too. So I think I've told you this, I think there's an advantage sometimes to growing up rich because you got connections and you see the right behaviors modeled maybe. When you're poor, a lot of my buddies that are successful now that were poor, they knew what they didn't want. They were fighting, they learned to struggle. They grew up sooner, right? They couldn't make excuses. They had to learn to be self-resilient. The middle's difficult because good's the enemy of great, right? And so it wasn't horrible. It wasn't like there wasn't food on the table. It wasn't like I didn't get a present on my birthday, right? So you kind of start to think that's what life is. No one in my family ever talked about dreaming or winning or being wealthy. Same time, we weren't really running from something either. So there was no stimulus. The stimulus when you're poor is to get out of there. The stimulus when you're rich is to replicate it. There was no stimulus from where I'm from. And so probably the rarest background when you meet somebody that's successful is the middle. It's actually the rarest that you meet somebody, they're from the middle. And so a lot of your listeners come from that place because most people are in the middle, right? And so I'm sort of, I think, an example of some of the things maybe you would need to do to get out of that space to move from good to some form of greatness in your life.
And I just wasn't afraid to take the chance. And the football stadium was also groundbreaking. You know, I don't want to do something and not be known for what I did in my generation. I want to stand out. So why not try to make history? Which is why I did the football stadium. 53,000 people is nothing to be frowned upon, but what you gotta look at is a comedian has never done it. So it was all about making a stamp and an imprint in today's generation.
I had been working my whole life. And what I didn't understand by being determined to chase something, by being committed to it, and what commitment is staying true to what you said you were going to do long after the mood that you have set it in has left. You see, people think commitment is saying, yes, I'll do it on the days when it feels good. But I have been committed to everything that I ever started in my life, and I never stopped and I never quit it. And so by being committed to everything that I started, I finished it. It built a certain type of spirit. It built a certain type of mentality. It built a certain type of individual. And so now I couldn't quit even if I wanted to. I couldn't lay in the bed even if I wanted to. I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. I had too much sweat equity in my life and everything that I was doing. Because I understood my existence wasn't about me. I went from me to we a long time ago. I understood the process is more important than the product. It wasn't about the outcome for me. Whether I made it to the NFL or not, that was inconsequential in God's plan for my life. But I was going to fall in love with that process because I understood by falling in love with that process, it was going to turn me into a machine.
Most people have a belief about what their real potential is no matter what you tell them. And that affects how much action they take. And of course, that affects the result. And then ironically, that result reinforces their belief. And then that belief affects it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a person has unlimited potential, we all agree. But they take little action, little results. Why? Because they have to start with a problem with their belief. They don't believe it's really going to happen for me. Maybe for Frank Kearns because he's got the cool hair and stuff, or maybe it's for you because you're so driven, but it's not me. Maybe Tony Robbins because he's a freak, got these big teeth. Whatever their thought process is, right? They got this thing, right? But what happens is, if you believe that there's very little potential, how much action are you going to take? Nothing, little. And when you take little potential with a little action, what kind of results do you get? Lousy little results. And when you get little results, what does that do to your belief? You go, see, I told you this was a waste of time, told you this wouldn't work. And then what happens? You tap even less potential. You take even less action. You get even worse results, and your belief gets even weaker. And this sucker feeds on itself until you are in a downward spiral. It's poisonous. It's poisonous and it's self-fulfilling. Now, what if something could happen that could come along and fill you with a sense of absolute certainty? Not like I believe, but mean where you know. In you guys' case, mine as well, we knew because we had to, because we burned the boats. There was no other option. We had to find a way. We weren't going to live that way. We all did it in different ways and for different reasons, but in essence, that was it. If you get yourself in a state of certainty that this is going to work, I'm going to find a way, and if this doesn't work, I will make the way, then you tap a lot more potential. And when you're certain in your potential, you take massive action. When you take massive action, you really believe in something, you get great results. When you get great results, your brain goes, see, I told you I was a stud. I told you this thing would work out. Now you're even stronger. You tap more potential, take greater action, greater results. That's how you went from $300 in a week to $2,500 in 5 days to $100,000 in a month to $1 million in a day. Same thing with you. And we get momentum. That's why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Now some people go out and they go, well, I'm going to take a bunch of action. All right, I'm going to open this product. I'm going to try it. And they'll say to you, I even did it. But it's like a salesman who goes and knocks on the door and he knocks on 100 doors and says, you don't want one of these, do you? Yeah, exactly right. You know? And even if he doesn't say it verbally, his face says it because he doesn't believe it's going to work. So his voice, his body, the execution is so weak. Maybe if he talks to 100 people, somebody's going to buy out of pity. They don't want his kids to starve, right? But he's not going to get the result. So the core difference in people is how do you produce certainty when the world isn't giving it to you? You go out and you try. In your case, you're $100,000 in debt, and nothing's working. How do you keep yourself going? The way you did it, the way I did it, the way you're doing it, we may not have done it consciously, is we didn't change our potential. That was there. And it wasn't even taking more action. Taking more action with a belief it's not going to work, it's not going to change anything. We got results in our head that made us feel certain as if it had already happened.
My first 10 years of my life, I remember being on one plane with my mom, my dad, and my brothers and sisters. We went on one trip in 10 years. Before that, I never been on a trip. We sat in coach, and we flew to Los Angeles, and we went to Disneyland. Okay, and every time we looked at something, everything was too expensive. So, and I was tripping out. All I knew was the people that had the money had the control. They decided when we went to the Mickey Mouse Pancake Shop, what rides we could be on. And you know, fast forward to today, you know, I don't stand in line when I go to Disneyland. I'm like, hey, what do I have to pay so I don't have to stand in line? my dad could have probably done that too, but he didn't go to the next level. And for him, for my parents, you know, you made money, you saved money, you protected money. And that was good, but it's not the only solution. My dad stopped at save the money and let's go on a trip. You know, rather than, hey, you know what? Let's keep building. Let's keep growing. Let's be obsessed with something monster, not just enough. And because my dad was satisfied with enough, he died at 52. I know maybe he'd have died at 52 the other way too. But when you scale out, dude, you can actually live longer because you're not doing all the work anymore.
I think most change in life is not about putting on a big cape and jumping off a cliff or out of an airplane. It's more like leaning into something. So if you find yourself daydreaming about something or wishing that you could change your life, start investigating. Start having conversations about it. Start leaning into change, right? I'm the kind of person that believes you should always make decisions with your heart and soul. You can use your brain for math. You can use your brain to look at the fine print in a contract. But when it comes to the actual feel of the decision, you always want to go inward and check it against your heart and soul. How do you do that? Here's the simple test. Does the decision that you're about to make expand you, expand your future, or expand the possibilities of your life? If the answer is yes, then the decision is yes, no matter how terrifying it is. If you conversely look at the choice that you have to make, and the decision will shrink you, will silence you, will inhibit you in some way, then the answer is no. No matter how easy the decision is, no matter how safe the decision is, the answer is no. Now, one of the things I want to point out that when you start to use this, does it expand or does it shrink me? Does it open possibilities or does it keep things closed? Does it raise my voice or does it silence me, right? Is that there's always a short-term and a long-term impact to the decision. The short-term impact to making an expansive decision, a decision that's based in your heart and your soul, sometimes it's terrifying because sometimes it means moving or it means changing a job or changing a relationship or having a difficult conversation or starting something new. And those sorts of things are always uncomfortable. So brace for impact, put the force fields up, but make the decision anyway. Because the long-term impact of making a decision from your heart and soul, that is where the best life comes from. Because you're living for what's true for you, not what's safe in the moment.
Your personality determines whether people are attracted to you or shy away from you. It is the show window in which you display your character to the world, and it is the one thing which distinguishes you from all other human beings. It is your trademark by which people recognize you, and it is the thing which determines your success or failure in selling yourself through life. Therefore, you should see your personality just as others see it, so you may improve it where it needs improvement.
My story is that I am a researcher, and I never thought I would have a big public career. And so I did a TED Talk that went very viral. And in the wake of that, I was kind of everywhere for a couple of months on every CNN.com, NPR. It was everywhere, and something I wasn't used to. And the marching orders from my therapist and my husband were, do not read the comments online. So I read all the comments online. And so one morning, I woke up and there were 2 or 3 new articles out, and I started reading the comments. And they were devastating. They weren't about my work, they were about me. They were super personal. And they were the things that creative people play in their mind and then give up doing what they really want to do. Like if I asked every single one of you, you would try, what would you try if you knew people would never say this about you? What would this be? Those were the comments that morning. Of course she embraces imperfection. What choice does she have? Look how she looks. I feel sorry for her kids. Less research, more Botox. Just mean personal attacks, the things that really, up until that moment, had inspired me to stay very small in my life and my career, just so I could avoid those things. So that morning, Steve and the kids leave. I stay home. I get on the couch and I watch 8 hours of Downton Abbey. And when it's over, I don't want to turn off Downton Abbey. Because the minute you turn off Downton Abbey, then it's like soccer practice and dinner and back to the mean people and maybe, should I get Botox? And maybe, maybe if I stand still when I talk. So I get out my laptop and I do a search for who was president in the United States during the Downton Abbey era. Have you ever done that? Like you're numbing with TV or a movie, and so when it's over, you just like stay in that space by like learning more about the actors and what's going on. I've been doing this long enough to know that this is like, you're laughing with me, not at me. So I put it in, and Theodore Roosevelt comes up, and a quote comes up. And I read it, and this is what it says. It's a quote from a speech that he gave in the early 1900s at the Sorbonne, and a lot of people call it the Man in the Arena speech. And this is the passage that changes my life. It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done it better. The credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with blood and sweat and dust, who, at the best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, at worst, if he fails daring greatly. So the moment that I read that, I closed my laptop, and this is what shifted in me. 3 huge things. First, I've spent the last 12 years studying vulnerability, and that quote was everything I know about vulnerability. It is not about winning, it's not about losing, it's about showing up and being seen. The second thing, this is who I want to be. I want to create. I want to make things that didn't exist before I touched them. I want to show up and be seen in my work and in my life. And if you're going to show up and be seen, there is only one guarantee, and that is you will get your ass kicked. That is the guarantee. That's the only certainty you have. If you're going to go in the arena and spend any time in there whatsoever, especially if you've committed to creating in your life, you will get your ass kicked. So you have to decide at that moment, I think for all of us, if courage is a value that we hold, this is a consequence. You can't avoid it. The third thing, which really set me free, and I think Steve, my husband, would argue has made me somewhat dangerous, is kind of a new philosophy about criticism, which is this. If you're not in the arena also getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback.